Welcome to the I Am You podcast. I am your host, Dr. Nitza Alvarez, a board-certified cardiologist and best-selling author. My hope with this podcast is to share stories so women can speak up and become the CEO of their own health. I am a cardiologist. I am a wife. I am a mother. My story is your story. I am you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of I Am You. Today, I am joined by Miss Deb Townsend that has such an amazing story to share with us about her journey with heart palpitations that got a little complex at the end of her journey. But now, if she's here to talk about it, is because we were able to help her understand what was happening with her. Deb, welcome to the podcast. It's nice to have you here.
Thank you.
So I love the fact that you're here. I know that whenever I invite my patients to come and join us and share stories is because in the journey of caring for you guys, I know that there are certain things that are happening in our lives that are worth sharing with the world. That's why you're here. And I'm so grateful that you accepted the invitation. I think that your story is going to be very valuable for a lot of women that are listening to us. Because as I said, your story is a little interesting because sometimes your story is the type of story that we can assume that there is a problem because you already have a diagnosis made and people keep carrying that diagnosis. And why don't you start with how do you ended up noticing that you have a cardiac problem? What was done for you? And then we'll go through that journey.
Sounds good. Okay, well, it really began about 5 years ago. I started noticing that my heart started kind of racing and getting kind of high, my heart rate. And I'm a nurse by trade, so I'm aware of that perhaps more than the average person and would check and say, what's going on there? Am I getting problems? And I know in my family, my mom had some problems with that, so I was a little conscientious about that. But then I noticed that even when I was sleeping at night, it would wake me up with my heart racing, and that concerned me. And so I talked with my doctor about it and my regular medical practitioner, and she at first just had me kind of watch and keep an eye on it because it would go back down to normal, and it just didn't seem to be an elevated rate most of the time or when I'd see her or those things. But I noticed, that it just was happening a bit more, and she put me on a beta blocker, metoprolol, and 25 milligrams, and said she wanted me to see the cardiologist. So, of course, I was living in Key Largo at the time. We had one cardiologist. He was very busy, and so it was months out before I'd get an appointment to be able to see him. And so while waiting to do that, I would keep having some of these episodes. And I had one when I was at work that got very high and I didn't feel well at all. And I called her and she wanted me to go over to the ER and just have them hook me up and kind of watch for that and see what is causing this and why is it coming. And it wouldn't be like I was exercising or doing something big or anything like that. So I went over there and I spent several hours in the ER, yes, hooked up and all of that stuff. Of course, nothing happened. So you didn't end up being able to see anything that was going on. So finally, I got in to see the cardiologist, which was wonderful. It took, like I say, several months. In the meantime, I was on that medication. It did seem to help, and it did seem to help some. And he evaluated me and did many tests, the echocardiogram and all the other kinds of things. And that my own doctor had done EKGs when I went into the office too. And of course, nothing showed up then. But he did find, and then he had me do a 30-day sleep study as well. And wear the heart monitor for 30 days and a sleep study, both again. And so both the sleep study and the monitor, wearing it for 30 days did end up showing some SVT in there at times. And, trying to correlate it with what was going on when that was caused was really very puzzling because it wasn't necessarily like if I was exercising and went and worked out or this or that necessarily. I could be sitting at my desk at work, trying to do something. So that got to be complex, and he did not have good answers for me either from all of the studies. So I just kind of went on staying on that medication. But what I found is my heart rate kept getting lower and lower, and it was getting down into the 40s. And so we cut that medication in half, and I was only taking 12.5 milligrams of
Okay, so I'm going to interrupt you there for a second. For the audience, so clarify, SVT means I had a supraventricular tachycardia, which is I have a rapid heart rate originating in the upper chambers of the heart.
Right.
Blessed that the heart did it when you were wearing a monitor, because sometimes we put monitors and we don't capture it. No? So they were able to see it and say, okay, we see it. It's an SVT.
Yes.
Now you're sharing with us, well, but even though we knew that there was an SVT, we couldn't tell why was that happening and why it's happening so sporadic and spontaneously and unpredictable times, no?
Right.
So it makes sense when your heart races, if you're active, if you're dehydrated, if you're bleeding, you're sick. But in your case, it was like random moments, which is what makes it feel so weird. No, I can be sitting on my desk and all of a sudden the heart takes off.
Right.
Now they put you on a medication to treat that even though it was helping, it was also causing some side effects. Because when your heart is not racing, because that wasn't happening all the time, then your heart is normal and now it's dropping that heart rate too much. So you were sharing with us, and I didn't like that too much. I didn't feel so good when that was happening.
Right.
So the medication was adjusted and
it seemed like it was better with the lower dose, but it still happened. And I would still have episodes of that. And then as time went on, it seemed like it progressed a bit and got a little bit worse. And it seemed like I could correlate it with, especially when it was hot. And so, or when I would get overheated, my body temperature would go up or something, that there seemed to be a correlation. So if I would go out for a walk or something, then the longer I went, and if it was hot, I could feel my heart starting to race. And I had started wearing a Fitbit quite a few years ago, so that I could just peek down and check and say, what the heck's my heart doing? Because I could feel it, and I could feel it wasn't right. I said, ooh, it's getting really high.
But well, you said that was the same thing that you were experiencing before that you started tracking it, no?
Yeah.
And you said, okay, so I'm going to try to see when is it that is more obvious to me.
Right, exactly.
And then for you, it was more obvious than in the heat.
Yes, definitely. So I started noticing that was a factor there, that seemed to be a time that made it worse. And I also noticed that, when I would, most of the time it was like that, but it wasn't always. I would wake up in the morning sometime and notice that I'd had an episode even though I was sleeping. So then that didn't fit in my kind of paradigm of what might be going on with me.
So go back to this is spontaneous and unpredictable.
Right. And then it seemed like there were a couple times where I would be out in the heat. I wouldn't necessarily be exercising. For example, I went to an event with friends, and we were just waiting in a line. I wasn't doing anything more than that, and I just felt like I was going to pass out and I was going to fall down, and I just felt horrible. And I knew I needed to drink water, and I had kind of learned that if I drank enough water, it seemed to relieve that. And so I always carried water with me, but I hadn't planned to do anything active. And so, and we were eating something and going to have a drink at the table and some, things. And so it didn't seem like a time I had to carry water. I didn't have any water. So I was trying to get up and get some water from the bar where all the people were waiting to get their drinks. And that wasn't working too well for me. So because they were ahead of me, and I just had to quick text my husband and say, I'm going to pass out. And I just had to sit down on the ground, almost lay back, because I just felt that I was going to pass out.
So when you started this with the tachycardia problem, because I want the audience to try to understand that when you were diagnosed and you were in Key Largo, this wasn't happening to you.
No, it got worse.
This episodes of feeling that you were going to pass out wasn't happening. It was more like, I'm aware that my heart is racing and this feels weird, no?
Yeah.
So now fast forward a few years, we're talking fast forward a few years, then you started having these episodes.
Right.
And at that moment, do you ever assume or thought that this was the same problem? That this was your SVT? Did it ever occur to you, this is something different? Or for a little while you said, okay, this is my SVT. It's just that it's getting worse.
I just felt like it might be getting worse, and that scared me because I thought, what's going on, and what's it going to, continue to progress and get worse. And I hadn't been seeing the cardiologist for quite a while because he was so busy, and my doctor was managing me, and I'd been doing fine. And so then when we had moved here to the Villages, that's when I, started to do these outdoor activities more. I wasn't working anymore all day in the air conditioning and kind of a good environment. I was out more, in the community and more active. And I started having these episodes where we would go walking and I would start to heat up and start to just feel really bad, like I'm going to pass out and I have to stop and find a bench or do something and try to recover. And scary, yeah. And I usually did have water at those times. I started carrying water everywhere I went then at that point to be able to.
And how long it took you to say, I need to get this checked?
Well, I had, shortly after we moved here, I had gone ahead and checked out, I was working at the college, Lake Sumter State College, and the nurses there, everybody said you were wonderful and that you were going to be giving this talk. And they were so excited to be going. And I also am part of Always a Nurse at the Villages Club. And they were all saying, oh, Dr. Alvarez is coming. And they were so excited because,
because I'm okay for women.
Oh, yeah. And they said, she's just wonderful and she's so good for women. I thought, oh, I got to go. And my poor husband, I said, you got to go too. I don't know anybody yet. We're new here,
Did you drag him?
So I drug him. He said, I felt like I was one of three men.
What an awkward position for a man.
Right. But he's such a trooper and he's a psychologist. So he's very tolerant and he loves women. So he was impressed. And he said, wow, you got to be able to go see her. Because I was having these problems.
So even you as a nurse put up with this for a little while.
Yes.
No, you were trying to kind of fix it. Let me drink water.
Right.
But it's a scary thing because you could never predict when that was going to happen.
Right.
So it started interfering with your lifestyle.
Yes.
I'm afraid that this is going to happen. Now they're going to invite you to outdoor activities and you're going to think it twice before you go because you're like,
Or if I didn't have water, because always falling out of my water, it starts to become your safety net because I knew that the water seemed to help and revive me. I think, well, I can't go very far, or if some people say, oh, let's go for a walk or whatever.
So you started modifying your life around that illness.
Right.
Yes?
Yeah. And then think, well, I'll do my more vigorous exercise in the house, in the air conditioning with my water there, and I can get more if I need it. So I started kind of altering my life around. I didn't want, being a nurse, I knew it was important to be active and that's so important for your health. And I wanted to keep doing that and I wanted, to do it. But then getting more and more fearful of the environment that I love to be out in nature and the things, that I really liked. So and especially in the summer, I just didn't feel like I could do that at all in the summer, and the heat and the heat index and all of that. Or even go out and sit sometimes I wouldn't feel good. Like I say that one time when I felt like I haven't done anything and I feel like I'm going to pass out right now. So yeah, it starts really limiting your life for what you feel like you can do anymore. And I've always been an active person and I didn't like that.
So if we're speaking in past is because fast forward, we discovered what your problem was.
Right.
So we completed a test that is called a tilt table test. Yes. And that test is to provoke your symptoms. Right. And we do that in a very controlled environment. And I love it because every time we mention tilt table test for the audience, most people think that we're going to be tilting patients back and forth and we're going to make them get dizzy. But that test is a very standardized test. When we, under supervision with your cardiologist there, we're monitoring your blood pressure and your heart rate and trying to see if we can provoke those symptoms. And even though it sounds scary, it's actually the best place. No, I always say, what a better place to have one of those episodes than in front of your doctor so we can say, okay, what is the problem?
Right.
So you want to share with the audience your experience through a tilt table test, and then what do we discover?
Yes. Well, and I thought, I'm probably going to be fine.
Of course.
That's what you think because that's kind of how you are. But, and it seemed like when I first got lifted up on the tilt table, I did feel okay for a little while, but then I started having that feeling that I get when I don't feel right, is I feel like I'm going to pass out. I feel nauseated. I feel like I'm going to throw up. I don't feel right. And I just felt more and more lightheaded and more like I got to lay down.
And I'm like, no, you're not.
And you just left me there being tortured.
I'm like, okay, this is giving us a hint of what is happening.
Right. And so then eventually when I really did feel very close to that point where I'm just going to pass out, like usually when I will sit or lay down, when I feel that way, to relieve that, which is what I had been doing whenever I felt that way. I didn't get that relief. And, and then you guys were kind enough to lay me down.
We said, okay, we have enough data.
Yeah, no? Right. When you had enough data to identify the problem, I guess would be, which is the goal and what we were hoping to do. But it was not pleasant for me, and I did not feel good. I felt terrible.
So, of course, it feels terrible because that's how you felt. Yeah, that's how you were feeling before you were aborting it because you were laying down or sitting down to abort the episode.
Right, I would stop it, right.
So we found out that your blood pressure was the problem. Your blood pressure was dropping dramatically to make you feel so bad.
Right.
But then in addition to that, normally when the blood pressure drops, the heart rate goes up.
Right.
That actually is a compensatory mechanism.
Right.
But in your case, your heart rate wasn't going up. Your pulse never went up to the point to help you with that because your medication that you were taking.
Right.
So we made changes and we said, okay, this is the problem. The problem is your blood pressure. This is we're going to correct hydration, compression stockings. We're going to remove the metoprolol. No longer serve you. It's not a good drug for you anymore.
No.
And how are you feeling now?
I feel better. And, the other thing, I don't take that medication anymore. So I have not really had problems with it so much. And I also add the Himalayan salt to my water when I'm walking, and I'm sure to stay hydrated. And I've had a couple of episodes still where my heart will go racing a little bit, but not to the extent it was. And I once again, I do stop and sit down if I feel that way, because I'm aware of it, but it's not bad like it was. And so I've been able to do the putt and play 18 holes. And even if it's a warm day, as long as I've got that fluid, and not taking the medication, I'm able to get through that and enjoy it. And usually sit on the bench after 9 holes and rest a minute and then get up and do the other 9. So it's been good. And taking some longer walks without being so afraid, of getting too far from home or anything like that, as long as I carry my big water, like I say, with the sodium in it. And my husband likes to walk with me too. So it's good to have a partner just in case you wouldn't, but the episodes are like substantially decreased.
So I think that a few things for the audience is number one, as you were concerned about what was happening, seek medical attention. Right. Don't stop talking. Don't never assume that it's the same problem. Sometimes we get certain diagnosis, and then we assume it's just the same problem that is probably getting worse. And then, listening to you and how the understanding of what your problem is, because it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to disappear, we can make it better like we have. But also understanding gives you power because you said, now I understand that my problem is this. So I always make sure that I have my electrolytes, my pink Himalayan salt in my water, that I'm carrying my water because you understand. It can be many different diagnoses, but understanding the diagnosis give us also power to act on it. But the best part is recovering your quality of life. So it's hopeful for the audience to hear that it's not necessarily it's not all dark and for women in the journey. It's like if you speak up and you find the right provider to understand what is happening with you, and they identify the right test to do, then, and they're there, we are there, they're there. You just have to keep talking. Now, don't settle. And then if you don't get an answer and your quality of life is not good, move on and then keep talking. And I think that's actually is so valuable for the story that you share with us. Now you're back to I can enjoy my life and I feel more comfortable. Would you want to share anything else with the audience? Anything that you want to share from your own journey? Anything for the women that are listening to us that you want to tell them?
Well, I would say yes. Just don't stop and don't settle. Don't just keep looking. There are excellent providers out there. And, having worked in healthcare, I say don't just settle because it's the only one or you're with them and you're not satisfied. Keep going, keep looking, and keep trying to get answers for, what's going on with you, whatever that problem is, because mostly there are answers and of some kind. It's not always exactly what we want because we are aging, some of us, and it's not going to be, perfectly, without problems, but you can get the help and don't just, settle or something, just keep looking.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
And this takes us to an end of another I Am You podcast. Thank you for joining us. I hope this episode has empowered you to be the CEO of your own health. Tune into our next episode, and don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at NITZAMD. To explore more on this and related topics, visit our website, NITZAMD-Dr. If this episode resonated with you, please like and subscribe. And one more thing, share with the wonderful woman in your life.